Welcome to Hot Flashes and Cool Topics podcast, the voice for women in midlife and beyond. Here at Hot Flashes and Cool Topics, we talk about anything and everything to do with midlife. My name is Colleen.
My name is Bridget.
And it is Pride Month. And we are very excited to share a conversation that we had with Eeka McLeod from the McLeod family. Many of you may follow her on Instagram. She has over 114,000 followers on Instagram. She's had millions of views on YouTube, and she has over 2.4 million followers on TikTok. So why does Eeka have so many followers? Well, Eeka shares the story of her life. She has fostered over 18 children since grad school. She has adopted 3 of them, Eli, Evan, and Ella. And on her platform, she is creating a safe space for the LGBTQIA community and for people with disabilities. It was a really interesting conversation about how she has created this life with her children. Her first son, it has some disabilities and medical challenges that really, are pretty severe. Now, Evan has been all over social media. At the time that we taped this, Evan identified as non-binary. She has now transitioned to identify as a she. So if you hear us at any time, call Evan by the pronoun he. This was done prior to her identifying as a girl. So please understand that's why we used the pronoun he. But Evan was on with another group called The Old Gays,
Oh,
who are
yeah.
on TikTok, and they are hysterical. And that's where I
Yes.
first saw Evan, because she had dressed up in this beautiful princess dress and she went to see The Old Gays. And sure enough, they were all dressed up as princesses. And Eeka's platform is really about changing minds and hearts. Her story is one of, she is also queer, which puts her more in a position to understand what her child is going through, but she wants to make sure that the world understands what they're going through, and the world is listening. They've been on the Today Show, they've been on CBS News, just numbers of platforms, and she tells her story to us. And I thought it was such a interesting and fascinating view of what our world should look like.
Right. Absolutely. I talked to her about the fact that I was a former teacher and the importance of foster parenting and how important that is. And, just to even have someone be a foster parent and what to do with children that have to face the situation of being put in foster parenting, but just her openness as well, her loving of these children for who they are. Not trying to fit them into some mold and allowing them to just be who they are. And that's the first step. It's like, yeah, you want them to follow rules, but to have a child feel comfortable being who they are and not admonishing them because of whatever they feel they truly want to be. That's such an important step in just creating a healthy child, a healthy human. That is the first step. If they are not ashamed of who they are in the beginning, just because they're who they are, that's just the first step of raising just a healthy mental state for a child. Let's give them that. Don't make them feel ashamed of whatever they feel inside of them.
It's truly about loving them unconditionally, and she's a great example of that. And in this month, where the discussion on the LGBTQ, or the focus on the LGBTQIA community, increases, we just thought that she would be a wonderful person to have on, and a great example of acceptance and advocacy. And we hope that you feel the same way when you listen to this episode. She's going to tell you the story of how she came to be the mom of Eli, Evan, and Ella. And Eli actually has cerebral palsy. When I said the condition, she has cerebral palsy. And just how she loves her life, she loves her kids, and she wants people to accept everyone as they are. So here's our conversation with Eeka. Enjoy. Welcome back to Hot Flashes and Cool Topics. Today, we're going to have a great conversation with Eeka McLeod. And you may know that name because she is a very popular mom of 3 on TikTok. As a matter of fact, you have over 2.4, almost 2.5 million followers on TikTok. You've got over 100,000 on Instagram. And you really are talking about in your posts and in your TikToks, you're trying to get acceptance for both the LGBTQIA community as well as people with disabilities. So welcome to the show, Eeka.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's so interesting. Now that things like TikTok are around, we can get so personal with people. We feel like we know you already because we watched your life with your kids. But my first question to you is, it's so interesting how you knew from a very young age that you wanted to be a foster mom. And in grad school, you actually got certified. Can you talk about why you wanted to do that?
I actually knew from a very young age that I wanted to adopt. I didn't know at that age how that would come about, what that journey would look like. And then I tell the story of, I was in my much younger, thinner days, a competitive cheerleader, which competition wasn't then like it is now. So let me make that clear. And there were a couple of girls I knew on another squad, and they were sisters, and their parents, their biological parents, had 5 bio kids, and they fostered children. And so they would have all these kids. They would have, their 5 bio kids, and then like 2, 3, or 4 foster kids in the house. They had a big home. And I didn't know until the first time I went to spend the night, and I was like, oh, this is it. This is how. I was probably 13 or 14. And so ever since I was a little girl, I knew I would adopt. And then it was weird. Like, I think even as young as 4 years old, I knew I wanted to adopt kids. And when other little girls were playing like wedding with the doily or whatever on their head, or pregnancy, put the pillow in your tummy, I was playing adoption. So I've always I think everybody has a calling. It was mine.
Wow. So, with the foster system too, I'm a former elementary teacher, and I would have students that were in the foster care system, and some, would be in my classroom for just a week or two. And then some would be in there for the whole school year. How difficult is it to become a certified foster parent?
So it's actually a licensed foster parent. You carry
a
full
license.
license. Correct.
Okay.
And I do know both sides of it, because not only have I been a foster parent for a handful of years, but I was also Child Protective Services for quite a few years as well. And so to become a licensed foster parent, I would say it's a lot of paperwork. To me, I'm a very motivated individual. I just think it depends on the personality of those who are going through the process. For me, it was like the paperwork, even though there was a lot of things to answer, it was a lot of repetitive stuff. Write your address, write your full name, write your social security number, all that stuff. It felt like it wasn't that tough. And I was on, like, you have to take classes, like my paperwork, everything was done, my home study. And then I got into the classes, which usually is the exact opposite way. People kind of wait, oh, the next class is like in a couple months, and they start their classes. And then after the classes, they do the paperwork. Like, I was the exact opposite. I got in touch with a foster family agency and was like, let's do this. Come on, guys. Come on. Chop, chop. And I was on it, and that was it. So for me, it wasn't difficult. I licensed here in California. I moved to Texas for a handful of years, and then very quickly moved back, and licensed there as well. I would say the procedures between 2 very different states are very similar.
Okay. That was interesting, because thank goodness for foster parents, because, just the situations and the number of children that need to go in. And I also found families, like you said, of your friend growing up, that families, they were the same families that would take in. At our school, you knew who they were, and they were fantastic families. I mean, I never encountered an issue with any of these families.
Yeah, I think a lot of foster parents get a really bad rap, because what's aired on the news is the horrible stories. And to me, those are very few and far between. The foster parents, the hundreds of foster parents I knew in my 5-6 years of being licensed, were great. They loved these kids. I mean, they're all human. Nobody's perfect, but they were good to the kids. The kids were always clean and well cared for, and they genuinely cared about the well-being of these children. So I have nothing negative to say, of course.
Right.
Thankfully, my experience was positive with other foster parents.
Mine as a teacher was as well. So I can't think of.
I wanted to ask you, so from what we have seen, you have fostered 18 children in your
Correct.
experience. What is that like? How long does one foster child stay with you? How is it? Do you have several at one time? How does that work?
So it's a revolving door. Like, I mean, it depends on, remember when you're licensed, excuse me, when you're licensed, they're going to license your home for only so many children and of certain ages. And that's going to come down to a few things, like how large your home is, how much space is in your home, what the specific regulations and policies are regarding how many kiddos can be in a room and what ages and all that stuff. There's a lot that goes into it. And the social workers that license, all those regulations. So it's just a lot of red tape, but it's to keep everybody safe. You as the foster parent, especially the kids, them as the county or the FFA or whatever. So it's one of those things. The bigger the homes I got, the more kids I could take in. But as a single parent, because they're still going to look at that, I think my max was like 5. And at one point I did have 5. I had 5 under 5. And it was like, what? But
5 under the age of 5.
All 5 were under 5. And I was like, never again. I girl bossed a little too close to the sun on that one. And yeah, I learned my lesson. But the kids, you can never tell when they're going to come in, how long they're going to stay. My first placement, I was so excited. I was like that gung ho, very new, very naive foster parent. I was like, I'm going to change the world. And he stayed for like less than 24 hours. And I was just like, what is this? And it was good though, because I got to drop him off. And I remember them calling me the next day, like, hey, we found Bio Mom. We need you to come to the county building to bring all his stuff. He's going with her. She was not aware at the time of what had occurred. Cause he was with Bio Dad when the stuff occurred. So I remember being like, aw, but I did everything I was supposed to do. And then I brought him down to the county building and there was a woman, it was a packed, the county building was packed, which usually wasn't in Santa Clara County, but at that day it was. And there was a woman there looking at him and just crying, but I could tell I'm assuming it's his mom. He was little. He was like 14 months old. So he was like, and crying. And there was somebody looked like an advocate with her. And I looked at them and I looked at the advocate and I introduced myself. They introduced themselves. So they were legit. And I go, this is her son? She's like, yeah. And she was afraid to touch him because I had him. I was like, oh no, he's yours, honey. Go ahead. And she was like, and it was really cool to see that reunion so early out the gate, to see this parent who was clearly absolutely, in pieces over knowing her child had entered the foster care system, not being aware, not being there. And then to watch her just hold him. And I didn't have kids of my own yet at that time. But it was a really emotional thing. And so I was like, okay. And then I had to wait for the social worker to come down. It was copacetic and I left. So that was really cool. But seeing her tears, it just, you can't help but feel for the bio parents. Like they've been going through it, and I've never met a bio say things. I think they think certain things about bio parents and people who get in the situation in which, social services has to intervene. And I'll tell them, I was like, it's not really like that. These people love their children. They love their kids. I've never met a bio parent who did not love their child. So hopefully that gets out there.
Yeah. That kind of leads me into the next question. For those people who are thinking about being a foster parent and say, I don't know that I could give a child back. Like if they're in my home for 6 months or a year, one, it's nice to hear that the bio parents really love their children and want them, because that kind of eases but also, what do you say to those people who go, I don't think I could do that?
I would say, don't do it.
I would are thinking about it, but they're like, I don't know if I could give the child back.
I would say they need to take a long, hard look at themselves. You're going to enter a system that's completely broken and you're working with families that have been pulled apart. If you sincerely know yourself well enough that you could not give a child back and it would be a traumatizing thing for you, you're going to stress that child out. There is a term in the foster care system known amongst foster parents, which is called one and done. And what happens is, and unfortunately, the system does chew a lot of foster parents up and spit them out. One and done refers to the fact that many foster parents in high numbers take one case and that's it. They never foster again because that one case broke them. Stepping into
Absolutely.
a system, stepping into every system is broken. The education system, the prison system, foster care system isn't any different. There's so many legalities that have to be followed. I think people forget that there's no perfect way to do anything. But when it's so personal, these are children that you are helping to raise. They are in your home. You know, you can't help. I hope you can't help but love them. Like, I hope you can. You gotta love them. And I think that emotionally, and mentally, it is it's a triathlon for many of us, and some finish and some don't,
Yeah.
and that's okay. And I like to get away from this concept of like, we should tell people like, oh, you get over it, you'll be okay. Or, you know, if you don't think you can do it, just golly gosh, give it a try. I like to come from the very realistic point of view and the logical point of view that our foster parents are still human beings with emotions. And, you know, in the system, you're not allowed, you no longer are allowed to be a person. That's kind of stripped away from you. So you have to be okay with that. How you feel, what you think, all those things are not, they no longer matter within this system. So if it's too hard, if that's not something you can handle, it's definitely not for you. There are other ways to make a difference. There are nonprofits everywhere looking for volunteers, looking for donations, looking, you know, all kinds of things. There's a million ways to make a difference. I always tell people, know yourself. Know yourself.
That's so important. I mean, with the people that just as being a teacher that I saw that did this, and like I said, they were typically, there was about 5 families in the school where I taught that you knew that they were going to be the people that would take in the foster children that came into your classroom. And what would happen, and I was going to ask you, you know, they come from every situation. You
Yes.
never know what they're going to be. And a lot of the children are very traumatized. They're traumatized by whatever happened to have them removed from their family's home. And then they're traumatized because they're in a new home. So with the classes that you took, what are some things that you would suggest to people, or what are
So
some
I'm
things
a
that you
little
learned?
different. I'm a little different. So I was actually a therapist for many years. I have 2 master's degrees. I have a master's in professional counseling and a master's in, sorry, hold on one second. A master's in professional counseling and a master's in marriage and family therapy. So I was in grad school. I had already gone through undergrad. So that was also my undergrad. So I already had a really, really good foundation for the psychological and the mental health side of things. As far as the classes go, I don't think classes can really prepare you. They do the best they can to talk about like, here, let's run through an average case, right? Every case is going to look different. It's like a snowflake. They're all unique. But they'll help you run through that. So you get an idea of how, and it's a lot, you know, hey, well, first they go to the detention hearing, then it's the JD hearing. And these are what happened at those hearings. And in the meantime, this is what's happening with those kids. This is where social workers are getting reassigned. Okay, well, the emergency response worker removed the child. Now they go to a DI worker, and then they only are with them until after the detention hearing. Now they're going to go, you know, to the back end worker. So I think it's a lot for foster parents. And until you, you know, till you get on that roller coaster and just ride that bad boy to the end, you really don't know. I personally don't think the classes prepare foster parents enough. And I think that a lot of that comes down to not preparing foster parents enough as far as to how they can take the self-care and help and talk about maintaining their own mental health and their own emotional health through the cases and the kiddos that come into their home. Because again, it's a very personal thing. This is not like you're taking, hey, can I store my car in your garage? This is a human being.
Right.
These are human beings. These are children. And you do grow attached. So I don't think there's enough care taken for foster parents, honestly. And in promoting their overall well-being within the system as well. If you have people that are continually being broken down, I mean, eventually that's a problem. And we see that in every foster care system, because the issue isn't recruitment, it's retainment. You wouldn't need to recruit so much if you could retain the ones you've already trained, you know, who most of whom are great people who would do a great job, but there's just so little support And there's so little consideration taken for the fact that your foster parents are human.
Mhm.
A really good
Yeah.
point. And I kind of wanted to go into your family. So you have adopted 3 children. You've got Evan, Ella, and Eli.
That's
They were
them.
how did they become a part of the permanent family? Like I know you said you wanted to adopt, but with so many foster children, how did they kind of be the ones? Like how did you know they were the ones?
My mantra as a foster parent was whoever comes in and doesn't have the option of permanency through reunification when this case runs its course becomes a McLeod. That was my mantra. I had thought I was going to stop. I had my Eli and I'm like, okay, well, you're a single parent and he's got, Eli's medical issues were coming up. More and more diagnoses were being tossed on the table. And I was like, whoa, y'all, okay, slow down. My child fell out the disabilities tree, hit every branch on the way down, my poor baby. And so when Evan came, he was my first placement actually in Texas. When he came, and it was meant to be because I licensed there and again, did it very quickly because I just don't screw around. And they had done something wrong on their end. Not wrong, I should say, so not the right way. They had missed something on their end at social services. There were 2 systems my license should have been basically uploaded to, and it was only uploaded to one. So I was out, and again, we were living in Texas. I only lived there for about 4.5 years. And then that time adopted Evan and Ella and donated a kidney. I was busy in Texas, but they called me and said, we have this 5-day-old baby. Will you accept placement? I was like, oh, yes, I will. I'll squeeze on a little tushy. And I was actually out in Belton, which is a little bit further out. So I was like, I'm on my way. I'll leave now. I'll be home in an hour. And they called me on the way home. They're like, we can't place with you. I said, why? And they go, because somehow it was missed. They put you in one system, but not the other. And we're trying to call around. But of course, this is late at night. This is happening. Placements often happen in the middle of the night or after, social services is closed. It's not during business hours. I mean, it's people. And so basically in the end, they were like, just handle it tomorrow, but we're going to have to place somewhere else. So I was like, oh man. So I called my worker the next day, the issue was corrected. And that night I got the call for Evan. So, it was very much meant to be, but when I had Evan, I was very much on the fence about whether or not as a single parent with already an adopted child with severe medical needs, I should take another one. I knew another foster parent who really wanted a baby. And I was like, are you sure? Because it seems like you're overwhelmed. You've got a few toddlers that she'd already adopted. Oh, that she really wanted the experience of a baby. And so I said, okay, I checked with the social worker. I said this potentially, because he was probably about 2 months old. And at that time in his situation, Bioparents were not active in the case. And so social services was like, absolutely. Cause she's licensed. It's cool. You can make this decision. He can spend the night or whatever it was. She's like, I want to keep him all weekend. I was like, Evan was a baby who was drug exposed. So he screamed a lot. And I tried to warn her that is a very, very stressful thing to deal with. And that eventually he's just a little discombobulated. He would recombobulate. They all do. She wanted him all weekend. Okay, well, let's just start with Friday night and then let me know. The next day we both were invited to like this get together with a bunch of foster parents. Homegirl showed up with Evan and all his stuff and was just like, nope.
Really?
And it was that emotionally taxing on her. And part of me couldn't blame her, but part of me was really mad. And I remember looking at him in that moment and going, I will never, ever do that to you again, ever. And here he is 6.5 years later.
Wow.
That child, things are just meant to be. So that's how they wound up staying. So Eli's situation, he needed permanency right out the gate. Biomom, and again, trigger warning, Biomom had attempted to unalive herself twice while pregnant with him and then did unalive herself when he was 2 months old. So he was basically left abandoned. Bio dad, his last words to the social worker were, in my mind, he's like, deuces, I'm out. But really he said something, it's in his records. I have his records. I'm glad he's been transferred to the medical center. At that point, Eli had gone from NICU to medical center, so just a little step down, because I want nothing to do with him. And that was the last time there was any contact. So social services in Alameda County those social workers should be commended. They knew trying to place a medical child would be excruciatingly difficult. They ran through every home in Alameda County and then said, now we're reaching out to Santa Clara County. And it just was like, they reached out to a foster parent. I happened to know, but she didn't think about me. She couldn't take him. They reached out to a friend of mine who already had 1 medical kid and 3 bio kids. And she was like, hell no, I got my hands full. And she goes, but let me call my friend. And that friend was me. And that's how Eli came to me. And Evan, his story was basically, Bioparents just, they weren't active in the case. And eventually they just disappeared and parental rights were terminated and adoption took place. And he was a McLeod at that point. Ella is Evan's biological sibling, similar circumstances. She's a McLeod.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That's so amazing. Yeah.
And they're costing me a fortune.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit, because you have a great attitude about it, but I'm sure it's a very
I do now.
Yeah, but I'm sure it's very
in the moment it felt very different.
Well, and it just, as you said, kind of meant to be, just meant to be. But with Eli, he has cerebral palsy and several other issues. And I know recently you kind of had a medical, not setback,
emergency.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, basically when Bio Mom made those attempts, they were very serious attempts. Obviously she had, some severe mental health issues. And as a therapist again, something that was just meant to be, my heart went out to her. And I always tell people, we have to look past the actions and look at the human behind those actions. And I can only imagine how lonely, they were from China. So I can only imagine how lonely she was to be in a country where she didn't speak the language. And actually I will preface this with saying Eli does carry her last name as one of his middle names. He has 2 middle names. Just as a way to honor her, because she was in a lot of pain. But those attempts did cause his medical issues. So Eli has a condition called cerebral palsy. His specific condition, there's different types. His specific condition under that umbrella is spastic quadriplegia. And so what you're looking at, the spasticity, is that tightness you often see. So that's why his arms are curled up to his little chest. That's the spasticity. Quadriplegia, quad we know meaning 4, meaning it's affecting every limb. It affects his entire body. Sometimes it might just affect people's arms or just their legs, or an arm and a leg on one side. So CP, as we call it for short, affects everybody a little differently. So he has specifically spastic quadriplegia. He has short gut syndrome. So 4 days after he was born, I'm going to try to do this in a nutshell. He was in distress and almost died then. He developed a condition called necrotizing enterocolitis. Don't say that 3 times fast. Don't even try. And had to go into emergency surgery. And the end result of that surgery is a condition known as short gut or short bowel syndrome. And so when I met Eli, he had a Broviac line that was coming out of his heart, outside of his chest, and then he had a G-tube. So I had to train medically to bring my little Tinker Tot home, little stinker. We got all that stuff out though. Now he's got no tubes and he's just living his life.
Wow.
He also, due to the alcohol exposure in utero, he's missing 90% of his optic nerve tissue. So he has a lot of eye problems. And then he also had fetal alcohol syndrome, which I think they just refer to as FAS now or something. And now we add epilepsy to the list. So basically what occurred Tuesday, and I'll try to maintain my composure here because I'm still up here with my anxiety and emotions. Tuesday started off like any other day. He was a little sick on Sunday. Eli will make himself throw up. He had chugged his water, and I was so bummed out because JoJo Siwa has become a friend of ours. She's an absolute darling to my kids. And she was like hitting me up like, hey, what are you guys doing Sunday? And I remember telling her, I was like, probably annoying the hell out of each other. Want to do Universal Studios? So I was going to surprise the kids. They obviously knew they were going to Universal based on the outfits they were wearing, but they didn't know the other half of the surprise. When I got Eli up on Sunday, he chugged his water too fast and made himself throw up. And oftentimes what happens is that becomes like a sensory thing, and he'll continue to make himself throw up. So I had to scramble to find a sitter, have him home. He was fine the rest of the day Sunday, fine. I kept him home from school Monday, fine. And no other symptoms, no fever, no cough, no stuffy nose, congestion, nothing. Tuesday, sent him off to school, and he seemed like, just good old Eli living his best little life. And I went to get in the shower. Well, I got in the shower and it was a little before 9, and I get like 4 or 5 minute showers. And I remember getting in the shower and it was like 30 seconds in and my phone is ringing. I screamed. There was definitely a cuss word that came out of my mouth. I was like, I can't even get in the shower. And the phone rang and rang and rang. Clearly it went to voicemail. And I was just like, well, whatever it is, I'll just check that later. And then whoever it was called back immediately after. And at that point I knew something was going on. I was filming for our vlog. I was going to do a typical day in my life kind of thing. So I decided to film the call because I saw it was from the school, and I was like, oh, he probably threw up. And I had already emailed the teacher. I'm very communicative. He was doing this, no other symptoms. So throughout the day, just give him sips of water to keep him nice and hydrated, and just small bites of food so we keep tummy calm until, the little thing he's doing passes. It usually takes about a week and then he's fine. And the teacher and I were emailing back and forth, even talking about Evan, because they're in the same class, and how great Evan is doing right now. And that's when I got in the shower and the calls came. So when I got out, I just literally thought, Eli threw up. They're coming to tell me calling to tell me I need to come get him. And when I called the school, and the school secretary or admin answered the phone, and we always chat. Her and I get along really, really well. And she said my name. She said Eeka. Just the way she said my name, it was like my heart fell down straight out of my butt. I knew something was seriously wrong. And at that point, she told me Eli had a seizure. 911 had to be called. Fire and paramedics are here. And I'm standing there, no clothes on. And I was like, I'm on my way. I just kept saying, I'm on my way. I'm coming. And I seriously contemplated leaving the house with no clothes on. Orange County almost got a show. I did put clothes on though, just to be very clear with the viewers. I did clothe myself. And I mean, I said, like, I did not run to that school. I flew. And doctors have been very clear with Eli. He has less than a 40% chance of living past the age of 20 due to the extent of so many medical conditions and the trauma and his medical history, like everything he's been through. Because you'll hear people all the time go, my cousin's uncle's dog's best friend's nephew had CP and he lived to be 700 years old, like biblical ages, And I always tell people, everybody's medical history is different. He doesn't just have CP. That's just what presents more when you see him with your eyes. So doctors have been clear, anything could end his life, but the chances of it being a seizure are very high. He has never had a seizure. This was his first. We had a good run, almost 8.5 years. We had a good run. I've been very careful. So when I got that call, I thought, this is it. And I was mad in the car. I was mad as a hornet. Because I remember I just kept saying in my head, like, this is not fair. It's not enough time. We deserve more time together. Ooh, hold on, Lord Jesus, help me. Ooh, Sky Daddy, come on now. I was mad. I was like, we deserve more time together. He didn't get to hang out with JoJo Siwa in Universal Studios. We got to do it again. So I don't like Eli missing out on things because I want him to have every experience possible. Right. So I was really mad in the car. I was like, this is it, and you're not prepared. You were supposed to process more with the kids and help. We've talked about it. I've talked about it briefly with the kids because I've got to prepare them for the loss of a sibling as well someday. So there's a lot that goes into it. How do I handle this as a parent and be there for them? But at the same time, when this comes, I'm going to be grieving and it's going to be so excruciatingly painful. So on the way there, all I kept thinking was that, and that I needed him to see me in his final moments. I needed him to know I was there. Because again, there's a lot of guilt for me as a parent, and it's unrealistic guilt. That guilt whispers weird things in your ear. You weren't there fast enough when he was a baby. Well, of course I didn't get the call till he was like almost 5 months old. I didn't know he existed, but I do feel guilty. I hate that he went so long without somebody there. And so I just wanted to make sure he knew I was there. When I got there, I flew through that office like a feral cat. I did not try. I almost hit the ambulance. I turned that corner. And I did not check in and say anything to anybody. I just flew through straight to the classroom. I flung that door open. The teacher, principal, and aide are in there like, oh, you could see they were just horrified. They're like, not a McLeod kid. You know, they know I love my kids. And paramedics or fire were there. I didn't say anything to anybody. I was just panicked. I'm sure they could see just like my eyes were as big as saucers. So I was looking for my child, and there was like a shelf, and he was on the other side on the ground with one of the paramedics, and I went over there and I didn't say anything. I just picked him up. It's like, you know, in my mind, I was like, I can save him. I can do it. Nobody's got a stake in this game like I do. Nobody wants him to live the way I do. So get away from me. None of you know what you're doing. And, you know, he was really weak. He was, you know, he wasn't my typical Eli. So we were rushed by ambulance because of all his other conditions. We were rushed by ambulance to a local children's hospital. We stayed in the emergency room we were there for like 8.5 hours. Eli hates medical. He hates anything medical. And he always, even dentist's office, he knows, and he starts screaming. So he, you know, they've put him on medications. They've been very clear that, you know, now that one has finally come, it's likely that they're just going to start coming. And so he's on medications. We got to be really safe. The school's really aware. The school did a great job. And, you know, everybody did everything they could do. So now it's just taking proper precautions. And I'm like, I don't want him outside if it's over 80 degrees. I don't want this. I don't, you know, so talking to the school nurse this morning, she's so great. And she's making sure, she's like, I'm going to write all this in the health plan. And I was like, okay, perfect. But it was probably one of the scariest, moments thus far as a parent. I don't want to feel that again, but I know I eventually will. So he's doing great now. I am not faring so well. I can't sleep. I'm having nightmares. So I'm just waiting for the emotional high, that anxiety, that hit, that fear, that terror. I just got to wait for it to come down. It's going to take a little time. But he's doing great. He's back at school. The day after, he was still a little weak, very hungry. So just trying to keep him fed and trying to let him rest, making sure the house is cool. It's really hot right now in Southern California. And, you know, the next day he was ready to go back. He was laughing again and smiling. So I physically took him back to the school with 2 different shoes on, because that's where I'm at as a parent right now. Yeah. And and not even like 2 different shoes, like a sneaker and a flip flop, like, just to be clear, like it's not even like
not even close.
Family. Yeah. Do we really call one of those shoes? Like, so I took him in, and he was just like smiling in the office. He knew he was back at school. He was all like, yay. COVID was really hard on him because he was stuck in the house for like 2 years because he's high risk. So yeah, he's doing great. They've got the rescue med there. He's taking his medication now at home to help minimize, and we've got a plan in place, which is just call 911. Like,
yeah.
Like, if there's nothing else any of us does, if there's nothing else I do as a parent, I've got to keep him alive.
Oh, and you know, I saw your TikTok and your explanation about the lack, because people, I don't think, even me, I had a sister that had epilepsy, and we didn't know till she was like in her 30s. Like that's when we knew she had a seizure. She could have had them before and we weren't aware of it. But the lack of oxygen, when you were explaining the lack of oxygen, because people think, you know, just your average person thinks, like you said, they don't understand the risks and what goes on. Yeah. But when you explained it on your TikTok about the lack of oxygen, you're thinking, yeah, this is very scary. This is a very scary thing. It is.
And Evan has had 2 seizures, but because Evan is, you know, healthy, and obviously his body is doing the things it's supposed to do. He's walking, he's moving, and Eli's body isn't doing that. And Eli we know the medical history from in utero. We have the EEGs, we have the MRIs showing a lot of concerning and alarming things in his brain activity. It's everything together. I was hoping people understood it's everything together. When it was Evan, I alerted the neurologist. They were like, we'll just keep monitoring. If they keep happening, then we'll put him on meds. I try to keep my kids off meds if I can. And he's been, knock on wood, okay thus far. But with Evan, he bounces back like within a minute. So it's very different for both kids. And again, Eli is just much higher risk. So I think a lot of people see seizures that way. And I tell people seizures are rarely fatal. in people like Evan or you and I. They're rarely fatal, but for kids like Eli, it's different.
Sounds like you went mama bear as any mom would.
Yeah.
And
Well, I was like a feral cat girl.
Feral cat. Yes. Yeah.
It's tunnel vision. You got to get to that baby. Mothers relate to that part,
Absolutely.
we can, and I guess that leads me to the question. You've gotten so much popularity on TikTok and other social media, but what was the intent when you started the TikTok? What, you call yourself a family of misfits. What was the intent, just to kind of, and I love that because we all,
there was no intent. It was very unintentional. I only even made our Instagram public at the urging and encouragement of a friend at the time she liked social media. To me at that time, it looked like she had a big following. She had like 17,000. I was like, I didn't know anything. I didn't know this industry or this game. And she just kept saying, people need to see your family. I was like, ain't nobody want to see a family of misfits. We are, I can't say it on here. We are a poop show.
You could say that.
And that's the only way I can describe us. Like nothing is ever together. It's just like organized chaos somehow at all times. And so, I finally made our Insta public. Nothing much was going anywhere. A lot of it was focused on talking about, the kids' needs and doing stuff like that, especially going to theme parks. And then I had a different friend at the time be like, you got to get on this app. It's so funny. And she was probably telling me for like 2 months. And I was like, I'm good. No, I'm good. She just wanted me to watch funny stuff. This would have been, finally, I got on like December of 2019. And I did the same thing everybody does with TikTok when they first download it. You're up to like 3 a.m. watching hilarious videos. And, and then I didn't even post till early 2020. And I think I posted like 4 or 5 videos. It was like the 4th or 5th video that went viral. And I had no idea what TikTok would turn into for us. I had no idea, zero. It was unintentional. It kind of happened very fast. And I love that so many people have embraced a little boy in a dress and a family of misfits. We represent a lot of different marginalized communities. And, I hope that, my goal was always to promote acceptance and inclusion, but I'm hoping to bring more awareness to a lot of especially with Eli, for example, there's so little funding for equipment, for medical supplies, for everything for kiddos like Eli. Families like ours who maybe can't afford to pay out of pocket, they're fighting for things that their kids need. And it shouldn't be that way. This is horrible. You're terrified enough. Like, why does everything need to be made harder? So I'm hoping that in bringing awareness to so many different things that we make somebody's life better. People see this and go, wait a minute, this family is on some level very relatable. I've never seen it from this point of view. This is shocking, or this is amazing, or whatever it is. And maybe you never know, especially we have a lot of young followers, kids. I mean, they're stepping up. They're the next generation. What are they going to do? What are they going to do with the information they've been given on platforms like TikTok?
Mm-hmm. And I think just the awareness that you're bringing to it. And I think when the younger generation sees your TikToks and sees what you're doing with your family, the acceptance will grow. I'm hoping that our children I already see it in our generation. Colleen and I have children in their 20s, and we already see the acceptance is so much better than it was when we were their age. And I'm hoping like for these younger children that there's just not even going to be a question that you need to accept people.
I'm 41. So to see so much change with social media, and our world, it's crazy. Cause like at 41 years old, my aunt, when I was young, had a rotary phone, still those are good times. Like I always tell people, I remember when we didn't have answering machines. Mm-hmm. That phone just rang and rang. And then phones had cords, like
landlines.
Yeah.
Those were the good old days.
I know. Actually, when people couldn't find you, right? When you actually could go, MIA for a little bit, and now they can find you. They can track you on your phone.
Yeah.
Yes. The world has changed.
I
Mhm.
first discovered your family when I saw that Evan was meeting the old gays, which that is a group of 4 amazing men on TikTok. You have to follow them too. And how did that come about?
So I want to say that there is a 5th amazing man behind that group as well, who films and does all the content for them.
Really? Okay.
He's
Good to know.
wonderful. Yes, he's wonderful. You don't see him. Sometimes you hear him in the videos talking to them, but he's also incredible. So I don't know if he wants me to put his name out there, so I'm not going to say it, but he's wonderful too. The old gays, aka the grandpas. I had been following them, loved them, adored them, loved everything they were doing. They're funny. I mean, the TikToks and everything, the creativity behind the content is also just admirable. They focus on it. I don't have the ability to focus on it quite as much, which I'm like, man, if I had the time and the film skills, like what could we do? But there a video had popped up. I don't remember which one it was. And I just typed in the comments section, like, hey, we love you guys so much. Would you ever be open to collabing? And he contacted me back right away. They followed us back. So once you've followed, then you can DM your mutuals. And we just came up with a plan. And they had 2 options. They were like, we can do this, or we can have all the guys be in dresses. I was like, I think that would be even more meaningful to Evan. And you could see Evan was like, when he came in, like, wait a minute. He's seen a couple other little boys in dresses, but to see grown men, especially men of that age, and he calls all people who appear older grandma and grandpa, which in public is so humiliating. Any person who appears older to Evan, he's like, it's a grandma, mom, look, it's a grandma. I'm like, oh my God, stop. She's like 35. She dyed her hair white. It's a trend. Evan, shush. And he's pointing, and I'm like,
Gotta love kids and their honesty.
They are the grandpas. We can say that. And that's what we drove out. They're out in Palm Springs area. We drove 2 hours out there. We love a nice little drive. And the day just happened. Both myself and the person behind their account, the genius behind the old gays, we were both just filming everything. Sometimes he would ask questions. We just filmed the interaction. Evan clammed up a little that day, which with his autism, usually he's just this very bright, vibrant, excitable, hyperactive individual. But sometimes every great once in a while, he'll just be, kind of like step back. I think he was just genuinely like, whoa. And then I don't know, we just had a day, we had lunch there, and other than everybody being in their outfits and changing outfits and filming a few TikToks with them, there was really no agenda. It was a very good day. And then we left, and I had the content, and I remember thinking, what do I do with this? Because that video that went viral was my content. And I wanted, in a lot of our content, my goal is to focus on the kindness of others, the acceptance and inclusion from other people towards our family, towards my children. Not always in those types of videos do I focus on my kids, if that makes sense. So the focus of the content was them, because these men invited 2 people they didn't even know to their home. They had lunch for us. They were kind to a child they had no ties to. And what was even more sweet, I didn't think about it, but as we were talking about their dresses, they had all gone out to purchase dresses specifically for that day. So they took time out prior to even meeting us to have to do something to try on dresses. And none of them is rich, of course, none of us is. And, I think some of them went to like the Goodwill. So they were really having to look. It was work to find something that would fit them and something that seemed appropriate for the occasion without spending an arm and a leg, i.e. the dress Evan was wearing in that video. And so it was just, I think people will miss all those things. And those are the things I think my therapist brain looks at, all the other things that these people did for my child. that I think a lot of people would totally, completely, it'd be above their head. So yeah, it was incredible. It was incredible. And I don't even remember, we met them, and I think it was days before. I remember sending, like I said, the man behind the magic of the old gays. I remember sending him the content I had created. I was like, what do you think? And he's like, oh, I like this, and that. And I'm like, it's not right. It doesn't feel right to me. Like, yeah, it's good, but it's not great. And I really, really wanted to highlight the old gays and how great they were. And I revamped it and then released it. And that's what you saw.
Wow.
That's what millions and millions and millions of people saw, which is so nice because it resonates. And why do you think your family resonates so much with other people on TikTok? And how do you respond to the negative? Because there's some crazy people on TikTok.
I don't necessarily think it's always people being able to relate to us. I think people are also curious, but I think even if you can't, from a personal perspective, understand being queer, being disabled, being adopted, being a single parent, being a person of color, whatever it is, I think what people resonate with the most is we are a family of underdogs. And I think a lot of people can relate to that aspect of who we are. And that's why I would say we're misfits. It's like, really, do we really belong anywhere? And, I always tell people our souls just somehow found one another. Whether it's this lifetime or another lifetime, I think our souls will always find one another because we're the only ones who really can deal with each other. We just understand one another on a whole other level. Like, I have the worst, gnarliest, most sarcastic sense of humor. And even other adults are like, is she okay? Has she been drinking? One, yes, I have. Two, my kids are just like, Mom, you little devil, you. So like, my kids totally get it at their ages, where other adults they cannot grasp my humor. My kids are just like, oh, good old Mom, just ignore her. Come on, let's go get the Legos. So I think that's what people relate to the most. As far as hate goes, it's an everyday thing. We get death threats, we get threats of harm. It just depends. Most of the time I try to use humor. It's my coping skill. So most of the time I'm just like, you couldn't have been more creative. It's a sin. It's disgusting. Okay, come on, Kyle, pull it together. Somebody once told me, they clearly didn't know us. They told me my womb was cursed. And I was like, points for going after the uterus. I like it. But it's just kind of like one of those things that sadly, I think is acceptable in our society. Well, you're public, therefore you're fair game. And I'm like, that's not how it should pass, bro. You're not going to pull a muscle doing it. I always liken it to people like, okay, well, people get punched in the face in society. People are assaulted every day. So if I go out to buy, formula for my baby and I get punched in the face, I deserved it. No, that's the same. You can't stop thinking like that. But as far as that goes, it sadly just comes with the territory. Very rarely does it get to me, but I just try to keep things in perspective and remind myself that it says a lot more about them than about us. And sadly, you just see a lot of people don't. So I see it because I receive the messages. I see the absolutely disgusting side of humanity. And I'm like, I think that we need more pets. Like, because they're the only ones.
Send them. Yeah.
We need to buy a farm or a ranch because we need to stop dealing with humans and just deal with animals because they're legit. So that's pretty much how I kind of deal with those things.
Oh, wow. I mean, I feel like your honesty just makes it so relatable. Your honesty in showing, because I always feel that any family that thinks they're perfect, they're really screwed up. Those are the really, like, if you're trying to pull off that we're the perfect family, there's a lot of problems there.
And being that family who openly declares we are most definitely not perfect, know, love us or hate us. This is just, and a lot of people will say that. I have a friend who I became friends with, and we've been really close for months and months now, who's like, when people know who you are. I was like, hey, nobody know who we are. She's like, yes. When people saw that you were in my stories, I was like, are they following us? I bet they're not even following us. Rude. So like, all these people know you are, but I'm like, follow us. So she was saying that, and she said, excuse me, she had said, like, the first question, like pretty much all of them ask her, like, are they the same in person? I was like, why do people like, do you not see my kids? Like, they don't know how to act. They don't know how to behave. Like, they don't even behave, let alone know how to act. Like, they're over here, like, freaking Sean Connery or something. They don't know what they're doing. We're all flying by the seat of our pants. I'm just as loud and insane as in person. And so I always find that really, really funny, because people think that you are just putting on a show. And obviously the way I edit things together, there's a goal, because I am walking a fine line, documenting our lives and trying to bring awareness to things and trying to do good things with our social media. So, but we are still real people, and we are still a family, and this is our real life. So it's finding the line and that boundary of respecting my kids in that way, myself, us as a family, but still being able to convey what reality looks like for us. And it's really, really hard. People don't realize how hard that is. And people are like, you're exploiting your kids. And I'm like, they're exploiting me.
Yes.
And like, Evan loves being in front of the camera, and Ella now is trying to steal his thunder, and it's a whole thing. But, there are things that happen. I tell people there are things that happen. There was something recently happening with Evan for months, and multiple doctors had to be involved. There was all kinds of things. And that was not put on social media in that way. I try to touch on it a little bit, but without going there, because I think, okay, how will Evan feel how would I feel if I was a little older and this specific side of my autism came out? So I was like, no, we're going to leave that here. We're going to leave it here within the family. So it is really hard.
And I don't think people realize that they're seeing 3 minutes of your days.
15 seconds.
Yeah. You know what
I
I mean?
know them, and they're horrible.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Cool.
It's like you don't know.
I think of you based on your hate comment. Like,
Yeah, really. I'm still just floored that people send hate comments, especially to children. I'm like, what is wrong with it? I don't know.
It's a lot on me. You need to go to jail. You deserve a beat down. I'm like, don't threaten me with a good time. Okay. Don't threaten me with a good time. Because what? I am at the point of frustration in my life that a little fight club might be healthy for me. And jail, I'm not paying rent. I'm not cooking. I'm not cleaning. I can nap and work out all day. I will get my body back. Like, a therapist in jail. You could watch TV all day. I could.
Oh my gosh! You could write
like a treat.
You could write that book.
She could write a book of comebacks. The book of comebacks. I would buy it. Because I need it.
My feelings.
Yeah. I should be so lucky. Yeah.
Those are great comebacks, because then people don't know what to say.
When
you are that quick with a comeback, they're like, you're supposed to get mad. Bullies don't know how to respond.
I didn't get to her. Daggone it. Yeah.
Where would you like to see this social media journey kind of take you? Do you think you could do a book, or is there something in the future you just riding the wave and seeing where it goes?
I would love to do a reality show. I would love to be that representation for families like ours and individuals like each of us separately. Even though we're a family, we are still our own people. And I would love to be that visual representation to put out there and show the chaotic, hilarious, super mentally unstable times within our family, but also like situations that occurred with Eli, showing what it's like to be a medical family or a family with an individual in the family who is high risk medical, and getting that call and going through that part of it, and the fear and the terror and all the doctor's appointments and the schools being involved and everything like that, showing that side of things. And then also following us to Evan's gymnastics or cheerleading, where he's playing dead on the ground, tongue hanging out, and People are always like, oh my God, your commentary is so funny. Or look at the face Evan's making. It's so funny. I was like, it's a good thing there's not a camera on me. So you see my face. Like, because my face is the one you really need to be seeing. Like, that death threat stare, like, you have to go home with me. Don't forget that. You're going home with me.
Right.
Like, get off the ground.
Yeah.
You are getting back in the car. Cameras being turned off.
Yeah, that threat about paying. I'll turn this bus around. I don't know.
Yes.
Kids don't realize we practiced that look for years. By the time they get it, they know that look very well. No words need to be spoken.
And the risk reward, the risk reward, of the behavior. I didn't get it when I was a kid. I'm like, oh my gosh, the laugh I'll get will be worth so much more than what happens in that car when I get home.
Yeah. I love the people who are like, you force Evan to wear dresses. I was like, honey, if I could force my kids to do anything, it would be to behave and listen. And I can guarantee they're not doing that. I have witnesses. I'm just saying, take this to a court of law. I have witnesses. They're not doing a damn thing they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But that's just our family. So I would hope, like, I would be really excited to take part in something like a reality show in which, you know, certain sides of our lives, of course, respected and we don't show. But then the real aspect of what families like ours endure, the good, bad, and the absolutely insane somewhere in between there, I think would be interesting.
Thank you so much, Eeka, for sharing your family and your story with us. We hope you opened some minds, and just what you are doing is such an important narrative for the world, especially now when there's so much anger and so much just closed-mindedness, so much
meanness. Let's I hope this conversation has taught people, let's not be so mean to each other just because somebody, I don't know what, if their lifestyle isn't like yours, doesn't mean they're bad people, you know, that they're wrong. Let's just quit being so mean and let's lift each other up.
Exactly. And, you know, our demographic of men and women, we are still learning the changing pronouns and when to call someone a she or a they or a he. So, you know, it might take a little time, but we're trying. We want you to know that we are trying. And please remember that at the time we were calling Evan a he. Oh, I'm sorry. We were saying at the time we were saying that Evan was non-binary. It was prior to her identifying as female. So we are practicing our pronouns. Sometimes we mess up, but we do that. We are trying because Bridget and I truly support the LGBTQIA community. We are allies, and anything we can do to promote acceptance in this world, we are all for. Thank you for listening today. Please follow us on all forms of social media, subscribe to the podcast, and just have a wonderful weekend, guys. Bye.
Bye.